Places where you don't know if you're stepping on the ground or the sky, because everything is a mirror. A cave capable of killing anyone who dares to enter within minutes. Lakes that turn animals into stone. Or fires that have been burning for more than 50 years, with no one knowing when they'll go out. This is Uncensored World, and today we're going to explore places that defy the laws of science. Number 20. Salar de Uyuni, the place where sky and earth blend together. In southwestern Bolivia, at an altitude of more than 3,600 meters, there is a surface so perfectly flat and so perfectly reflective that the human eye can no longer tell what it's looking at. During the rainy season, a thin layer of water completely covers the more than 10,000 square kilometers of salt, and the result is something no camera can fully capture. The sky disappears from the horizon because there is no longer a horizon. The clouds are above, and they're below. A person standing in the middle of the salt flat seems to float in the air, suspended between two identical skies. It's not an illusion created by editing or a specific camera angle. It's real, and it happens this way for anyone who sets foot there at the right moment. To grasp the magnitude of what we're talking about, you have to think in terms of numbers. The Salar de Uyuni is the largest salt flat on the planet, bigger than entire countries like Jamaica or Lebanon. According to geologists' estimates, it contains more than 10 billion metric tons of salt, and only a tiny fraction of that salt is extracted each year for human consumption. At that rate, the reserve could literally last thousands of years without running out. But the strangest thing isn't the amount of salt, it's its shape. The salt flat is so incredibly flat that for decades, satellites orbiting Earth have used it as a reference point to calibrate their altitude instruments, just as an engineer would use a perfect spirit level. No other natural place on the planet offers such a uniform surface on such a large scale. The difference in elevation between the highest and lowest points of the entire salt flat is less than 1 meter, spread over more than 10,000 square kilometers. The mirror effect exists because the Salar de Uyuni is the bed of an ancient prehistoric lake, Lake Minchin, which covered this entire region tens of thousands of years ago, and upon evaporating completely, left behind this perfectly level salt crust. When the rains come between December and April, the water spreads into a layer barely a few centimeters deep, so thin and perfectly level that it acts as a mirror with almost no distortion. There are no ripples, no waves, nothing to break the reflection. Beneath that white crust, moreover, lies something many people are unaware of. The salt flat holds more than half of the world's known reserves of lithium, the mineral that today powers the batteries of cell phones, computers, and electric cars across the globe. Bolivia literally sits atop one of the most coveted resources of the modern world, trapped beneath layers of salt that took millennia to form. And there's another detail that few imagine when looking at the photographs. Right in the center of the salt flat lies a real island, Incahuasi Island, covered in giant cacti several meters tall that grow at a rate of barely 1 centimeter per year. Some of these cacti have been there for over 900 years, in the middle of a salt desert where, in theory, nothing should survive. And this won't be the only place today that tricks your eyes in this way. Later on this journey, we'll find another corner of the planet where water once again plays tricks on what we think we see. Though this time the trick won't happen on the surface but hidden beneath it. And you, where are you watching us from? Tell us in the comments. But if what we just saw seems like something from another planet, what's coming next is even more unsettling. A place where fire burns a color that shouldn't exist in nature, and where getting too close could cost you your life. Number 19. Ijen, the volcano that burns blue. On the island of Java, Indonesia, there's a volcanic crater where, when night falls, something that shouldn't be possible begins to happen. The ground glows an electric blue, as if a fire from another planet were burning beneath the mountain. It's not artificial light. It's not an optical illusion. It's real fire, burning in a color that almost nowhere else on Earth can display. The phenomenon is called blue fire, and it occurs visibly on a large scale in only 2 places on the planet. Here, at Ijen, and in a crater in Iceland. In all other active volcanoes around the world, this same gas exists, but it burns during the day, mixed with sunlight, and is invisible to the human eye. What happens at Ijen is that the volcano releases sulfuric gases through cracks in the rock, at temperatures that can exceed 600 degrees Celsius. Upon coming into contact with oxygen in the air, that sulfur ignites spontaneously and burns with an intense blue flame that can reach up to 5 meters in height. During the day, the sun is so bright that the fire becomes completely invisible to the naked eye. Only in the pitch-black darkness of the early morning, between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., does the spectacle become visible to those who dare to climb up to the crater. And the climb is neither easy nor free. The very gas that produces that hypnotic blue is extremely toxic. A single deep inhalation can burn the lungs from the inside, and miners have died of asphyxiation in a matter of minutes after becoming trapped in a cloud of gas with no wind to disperse it. Despite the danger, hundreds of men climb up to this crater every night to do one of the hardest jobs on the planet, extracting pure sulfur by hand, using picks and metal bars, then carrying blocks weighing up to 80 kilos in bamboo baskets on their shoulders, descending the mountain several times a day along a slippery volcanic rock trail. Most of them work without any real protective masks, using only damp rags over their mouths, and earn the equivalent of just a few dollars for each trip. In addition to the blue fire, the Ijen crater hides the world's largest acid lake, with an acidity so extreme that it can dissolve metal and clothing in a matter of hours. Its turquoise color, so photogenic in pictures, is actually visual proof of one of the most corrosive chemical mixtures that exist in their natural state on the Earth's surface. This isn't the only corner of the planet where the ground conceals a liquid threat beneath its surface. Later on, we'll set foot on equally treacherous terrain. No fire this time, but just as lethal. If this is already leaving you speechless, hit like now, because what's coming hasn't even started yet. The Earth has more surprises in store on this journey. In a moment, we'll see it open up from within again, this time with no volcano nearby, in one of the coldest and most isolated corners of the Earth. Number 18. The Craters of Siberia, the Earth exploding from within. On the remote Yamal Peninsula in northern Siberia, a group of reindeer herders witnessed something in 2014 that no human had ever seen before in that way. The frozen ground, without any warning, burst open in an explosion that sent earth and ice flying dozens of meters into the air, leaving behind a perfect hole more than 50 meters deep. There was no earthquake. There was no volcanic eruption. The Earth simply burst from within. Since then, more than 20 similar craters have been documented throughout the region, and each new discovery raises the same question among scientists. What could build up enough pressure beneath the permafrost to cause it to burst open in this way? The current explanation has to do with the thawing of the Arctic soil itself. Beneath the surface of Yamal lie enormous pockets of methane gas, trapped for thousands of years under a layer of permanent ice. As global temperatures rise, that permafrost is thawing faster than usual, releasing the trapped gas, which begins to build up pressure beneath a thin dome of frozen soil. When that pressure exceeds what the ground can withstand, the result is an explosion that can be heard kilometers away. What's unsettling is that these craters have continued to appear. Since the first one was recorded just over a decade ago, scientists have found new holes almost every year, some of them in areas near inhabited settlements, forcing Russian authorities to constantly monitor the terrain with satellites in an attempt to anticipate where the next explosion might occur before it happens. Local residents have been telling stories about these holes for generations, and many of them use the exact same name we heard earlier on this journey to describe a completely different place, thousands of kilometers from here, where a fire has been burning non-stop for more than 50 years. There are no flames here. But whatever is causing these explosions remains a mystery, and at some point much later on this journey, we'll return to this very spot on the planet to understand why. Do you think these explosions are just the beginning of something bigger happening beneath the ice? Or do you think science already has the full answer? Let us know in the comments. From a floor that explodes without warning, we now travel to a cave where the heat itself can kill you before you manage to get out the way you came in. Number 17. The Marble Caves, the temple that water sculpted in Patagonia. On the border between Chile and Argentina, above the turquoise waters of Lake General Carrera, there's a rock formation that seems impossible. Walls of pure marble carved over thousands of years by the simple movement of water, forming arches, columns, and caverns that open directly onto the lake, as if someone had deliberately built a temple inside the rock. The color of the water is the first thing that baffles anyone who arrives here. An intense, almost artificial turquoise that shifts in hue depending on the season and the melt rate of the nearby glaciers. This color comes from extremely fine glacial sediments, known as rock flour, that remain suspended in the water and reflect light in a way that no other lake can match with such intensity. But what is truly extraordinary is the rock itself. For more than 6,000 years, the lake's waves have been eroding this calcium carbonate formation, carving out tunnels and cavities that today can only be visited in small boats, literally gliding through the stone. The walls change color depending on the time of day and the water level. Almost electric blues at dawn, pinks at sunset, and a nearly blinding white when the sun shines directly on the polished marble. What few people know is that this formation wasn't always surrounded by water. Millions of years ago, this very rock was part of the seafloor and was exposed at the surface by the movement of tectonic plates, long before the glacial lake that surrounds it today even came into existence. It is, quite literally, a fragment of an ancient ocean trapped in the middle of Patagonia. And this won't be the only cave to leave us speechless on this journey. Before we wrap up, we'll venture into another one, completely different, on a different continent, where water no longer sculpts beauty. There, what lies within the rock can kill anyone who approaches unprotected in a matter of minutes. If this has left you speechless too, hit like before continuing, because what's coming next raises the bar even higher. There are places where water has been sculpting beauty for millennia, and there are others where it is light, not water, that transforms the rock into a spectacle of color. Number 16. Antelope Canyon, the canyon that light turned into a work of art. In northern Arizona, on Navajo Nation territory, there's a canyon so narrow that in some spots a person can barely fit sideways, and so twisted inside that sunlight, as it filters through the cracks above, transforms into beams of color that shift in hue every few minutes. Intense oranges, deep reds, and almost unreal purples. None of this is created with filters or editing. It is pure sunlight, passing through rock that is millions of years old. The canyon was formed by a slow and silent process. Over millions of years, rainwater and desert flash floods carved their way through the sandstone, shaping gentle curves and undulating walls that look as if they were hand-sculpted. Each layer of rock, with its own hue and texture, tells a different chapter of the region's geological history, as if the canyon were a book written in stone. For decades, visitors to Antelope Canyon saw it only as one of the most photographed places on the planet, a perfect, natural backdrop for any camera. What many didn't realize is that the very process that made it so beautiful is also what makes it one of the most dangerous places in the entire U.S. Southwest. In 1997, a storm kilometers away, in an area where it wasn't even raining inside the canyon, triggered a flash flood that raced through these stone corridors in a matter of seconds, with enough force to sweep away everything in its path. 11 tourists who were inside at the time were trapped and killed, with no chance of escaping from walls that, in some sections, are no more than 1 meter wide. It can take just a few minutes for the water to go from non-existent to forming a current several meters high, without anyone inside the canyon noticing any warning signs until it's already too late. Since then, access to the canyon has been strictly controlled by Navajo guides, who constantly monitor weather reports for the entire region, including remote areas, before allowing a single visitor to enter. And this won't be the only time on this trip that we'll see the Earth itself take on color over time. Further on, we'll reach a place where that same phenomenon occurs on a much larger scale. Not on the rock of a narrow canyon, but across entire mountains. And the canyon itself hides another lesser-known danger. Erosion didn't stop at the visible walls. Beneath the surface, the rock continues to form cracks and narrow passageways that not even the Navajo guides have fully mapped out. In similar canyons in the same region, there have been cases of hikers who strayed a few meters from the marked trail and were never found, swallowed up by a stone labyrinth that changes shape every few years. Knowing that many hikers never return from here, would you still go in, or would you turn back? Tell us in the comments. What we're about to see isn't painted with light or water. It's painted with millions of years of minerals piled up, layer upon layer, until they form entire mountains. Number 15. The Danakil Depression, the most inhospitable place on Earth. In northern Ethiopia, on the border with Eritrea, there's a region that scientists, based on hard data, consider to be the hottest inhabited place on the entire planet. Here, the average annual temperature exceeds 34 degrees, with hardly any respite even at night, and the landscape seems otherworldly. Fluorescent yellow sulfur pools, bright green pools of acid, and columns of toxic gas rising directly from the Earth's crust. The Danakil Depression is located in one of the few places on Earth where three tectonic plates are simultaneously moving apart, a phenomenon so rare that it occurs at only a handful of locations worldwide. This constant separation brings magma extremely close to the surface, fueling active volcanoes, permanent lava lakes, and boiling springs that never stop emitting sulfuric gases. The color of this area is neither a coincidence nor the result of Photoshop. Each hue comes from a different mineral reacting to the extreme heat. The yellow is pure sulfur, the green is a mixture of iron salts, and the orange in some pools comes from extremophile bacteria. Organisms capable of living in conditions so hostile that NASA has studied this region for years as the place on Earth that most closely resembles the surface of Mars. Those who live nearby, the Afar people, have been extracting salt from this same scorching land for generations, carrying blocks on the backs of camels in caravans that can last several days, under a sun that, in some areas, causes the ground to exceed 50 degrees in temperature. It is, without exaggeration, one of the hardest jobs in the world today. The same toxic gas we saw billowing from the Ijen volcano appears here in much greater quantities, mixed with a heat that offers no respite day or night, something no other inhabited place on the planet forces people to endure on a permanent basis. Could you last a single day working in this heat? Or would you give up within the first hour? Let us know in the comments. After a place where heat and sulfur mark every corner of the landscape, the next destination is completely different in nature. Here, it's not the climate that's impossible, but life itself, which has flourished in a corner of the planet completely isolated from everything else. Number 14. Socotra, the Alien Island. In the Indian Ocean off the coast of Yemen, there is an island so cut off from the rest of the world that UNESCO itself, upon declaring it a World Heritage Site, decided to give it a name that says it all: Earth's Alien Island. And that's no marketing hyperbole. More than a third of all its plants do not grow naturally anywhere else on the planet. Nothing like what can be seen there exists on any continent, not even in Africa, which is geographically closer, nor on the Arabian Peninsula, on which it depends politically. The island's most recognizable tree is the so-called dragon's blood tree, a species shaped like an inverted umbrella, whose branches grow upward and outward rather than spreading out wide like any conventional tree. Its name comes from the sap it produces, a deep red liquid that for centuries has been used as a dye and as a traditional medicine for wounds and digestive problems, and which, according to ancient local legends, was the very blood spilled by a dragon wounded in battle. Growing alongside it are other equally strange species, the bottle tree, with a trunk swollen as if pregnant with water, capable of storing entire liters to survive the most extreme periods of drought, and dozens of succulent plants with forms that no botanist had documented before arriving on this island. The reason for such biological rarity lies in its geological isolation. Socotra separated from the African continent approximately 34 million years ago, long before any human life existed, and since then has evolved entirely on its own, without any genetic exchange with the rest of the world. That absolute isolation allowed natural selection to take paths it would not have taken anywhere else on the planet. Today, more than 90% of the island's reptile species and 1/3 of its entire flora are endemic. That is, they do not occur naturally anywhere else on Earth. It is one of the highest concentrations of unique life on the planet, comparable only to archipelagos such as the Galapagos or Hawaii, but with even greater isolation and far less research. And that same isolation has shaped not only the plants and animals, but also the people. The inhabitants of Socotra, just a few thousand scattered across the island, speak their own language, Socotri, which is not written and bears no resemblance to any other language in the region. It is passed down from generation to generation solely through oral tradition. For centuries, many communities on the island lived in natural caves, completely cut off even from one another, developing customs, songs, and forms of social organization that have barely changed since pre-Islamic times, something almost impossible to find today in any other corner of the Arab world. And there's still one more corner of the planet where isolation has trapped its own world, this time not on an island in the middle of the ocean, but on the summit of a mountain that time has left completely alone. If you haven't subscribed yet and don't want to miss videos like this, subscribe now to Uncensored World. Because what's left of this journey is going to take us even further. From the most extreme isolation on the planet, we now travel back to the water, to a place where the eyes are once again deceived, this time hiding something beneath the surface that was never actually there. Number 13. Cenote Angelita, the river that doesn't exist underwater. On Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, there is a cenote where any diver who descends about 30 meters encounters a scene that seems impossible. An entire river, with its own banks, its own fallen trees, and even its own visible current, flowing right in the middle of the cenote's fresh water. The scene is so realistic that many of the first divers to document it swore they had found a real underground tributary, a completely separate body of water hidden beneath the first. It isn't. What's happening in Cenote Angelita isn't a river, but a layer of hydrogen sulfide, a gas produced by the decomposition of organic matter that has accumulated over centuries at the bottom of the cenote. This gas is denser than fresh water, but less dense than the salt water that fills the depths of the cenote. So it remains suspended in a perfectly defined cloud at mid-depth, so opaque and whitish that, when illuminated from above, it casts shadows that perfectly mimic the silhouette of a shore, branches, and a flowing current. The effect is so convincing that even when passing their hands through it, many divers describe the sensation of literally entering another world, one where the water above, clear and luminous, suddenly gives way to a gray cloud that completely obscures visibility for a second, before opening up again to much darker and denser waters below. And this cenote holds another fact that few people know. Beneath that sulfur cloud, the salt water at the bottom has been trapped there for millions of years, with no exchange whatsoever with the surface or the open sea, forming an ecosystem of its own that scientists are still in the process of studying. With this in mind, would you dare to dive through that river that doesn't actually exist? Or would the idea of suddenly losing visibility hold you back? Let us know in the comments. From an underwater phantom river, the next stop on this journey takes us to a cave so colossal that it has created its own climate deep within the earth. Number 12. Son Doong, the cave with its own climate. In the jungle of Quang Binh, Vietnam, there's a cave so colossal that it's hard to believe without seeing it. More than 5 kilometers long, with sections so tall and wide that a 40-story skyscraper could stand upright inside without touching the ceiling. It is, by far, the largest cave ever discovered on the entire planet. For decades, no one knew it existed. A local farmer stumbled upon it by chance in 1991, but the sound of underground water and the wind whistling through the rocks frightened him so much that he decided not to go back in, and the cave remained unexplored and undocumented for nearly 20 more years, until a team of British speleologists returned to the site in 2009 and confirmed what no one had imagined. They had found the largest natural cavity ever recorded in history. What's most surprising isn't just its size. In some areas, the cave ceiling has partially collapsed over thousands of years, opening up enormous natural skylights through which direct sunlight enters. That light, combined with the interior humidity, has allowed an entire jungle to grow inside the cave, with trees over 30 meters tall, shrubs, and its own ecosystem of birds and monkeys that live permanently underground without ever needing to go outside. And the interior literally generates its own climate. The temperature difference between the warm, humid air outside and the cold air in the deepest parts of the cave causes actual clouds to form inside the cavern. Clouds that drift through the tunnels as if they were a sky enclosed beneath the rock. Cavers who have explored it describe the sensation of walking through an entire valley with its own underground river, its own morning mist, and even its own internal wind system, all without ever seeing the actual sky. Access is so restricted that only a small number of guided expeditions are allowed each year, and completing the full journey can take several days of camping inside the cave itself, literally sleeping under a stone ceiling that in some places rises over 200 meters high. Rarely does nature build something so vast that it requires its own climate to sustain itself. If this scale has left you speechless, hit like before continuing. Here, the Earth created a world of its own beneath the surface. The next destination does just the opposite. It turns what's on the surface into a spectacle that looks hand-painted. Number 11. Zhangye Danxia. The mountains the Earth painted itself. In Gansu province in northwestern China, there's a mountain range that seems impossible to believe without seeing it in person. Entire mountains covered in bands of red, orange, yellow, and green, arranged in undulating layers as if a giant painter had swept a brush across the rock. There's no human intervention whatsoever in those colors. It's pure geology, accumulated over more than 24 million years. Each colored band corresponds to a different period in the region's history, during which various minerals, primarily iron oxide and other metal-rich deposits, were deposited layer upon layer at the bottom of what was then a water basin. Over millions of years, the movement of tectonic plates pushed these layers upward, folding them and later exposing them to erosion by wind and rain, revealing on the surface something that had taken eons to form underground. This phenomenon is known as Danxia landform, and although there are other similar formations scattered throughout China, none match the intensity of color or the vastness of this region in Gansu, considered the most spectacular in the entire country. Earlier, we saw how sunlight transformed a sandstone canyon into a spectacle of shadows and color in Arizona. Here, something similar happens, but in reverse. The color does not depend on the light at any given moment, but is permanently etched into the rock itself, visible with the same intensity day or night, under the sun or under clouds. Thousands of tourists visit the wooden walkways built over the mountains each year to avoid damaging the mineral surface, and many of them agree on one thing. Photographs, no matter how heavily edited they may seem, fail to fully capture the true intensity of the color when seen in person. From mountains painted by time, the next stop on this journey takes us back underwater, where thousands of tiny organisms are capable of lighting up the night with their own light. Number 10. Mosquito Bay, the bay that glows when you touch it. On the island of Vieques, Puerto Rico, there is a bay where, as night falls, any movement in the water triggers something that seems like magic. A bright blue glow that lights up around every hand, every oar, or every fish that breaks the surface. as if the sea itself had electricity running beneath the water. The phenomenon is called bioluminescence, and although it occurs in various places around the globe, no other place in the world has the concentration found in this particular bay. Mosquito Bay contains the highest recorded density of a microorganism called a dinoflagellate, up to 720,000 units per liter of water, a quantity so high that it makes this place the most bioluminescent on the entire planet, according to the Guinness Book of World Records itself. Each of these organisms, microscopic and invisible to the naked eye during the day, produces a flash of chemical light as a defense mechanism, a reflex that in nature serves to scare off predators trying to eat them. Multiplied by hundreds of thousands of individuals reacting simultaneously to any movement in the water, the result is a spectacle that no human being can artificially replicate with the same intensity. What causes this particular bay to host such a high concentration of these organisms is a very specific combination of factors: warm waters, limited exchange with the open sea, a narrow inlet that traps nutrients within the bay, and surrounding mangroves that provide exactly the type of organic matter these microorganisms need to reproduce in such extreme quantities. All it takes is for any one of these factors to change, whether due to pollution, nearby artificial light, or chemicals on a swimmer's skin, for the dinoflagellate population to collapse within a matter of months, something that has already happened in other bioluminescent bays in the area that now barely glow at all. For this reason, it is strictly forbidden to use mosquito repellent, sunscreen, or any chemical products before entering the water, and access is permitted only in silent motorless kayaks, so as not to disturb this fragile balance that has taken centuries to form. Rarely does such a tiny ecosystem manage to create a spectacle visible from kilometers away. Our next destination takes us to a desert that once a year transforms entirely into a mirror of water. Number 9. Lençóis Maranhenses, the desert that fills with crystal-clear pools. In northeastern Brazil, in the state of Maranhão, there is a desert of white sand dunes that, for much of the year, hides something that defies all expectations of such a landscape. Thousands of lagoons of completely transparent water, scattered among the dunes, forming one of the strangest contrasts between sand and water on the entire planet. The name of the place, Lençóis Maranhenses, literally means sheets of Maranhão, referring to how the undulating dunes, when viewed from the air, resemble white sheets spread across the landscape. But the real surprise comes between June and September, when the region's rainy season fills the valleys between the dunes with water. This water cannot seep downward because, just beneath the white sand, there is a layer of impermeable rock that acts as the bottom of a natural pool, trapping rainwater in thousands of separate lagoons scattered throughout the desert. The result is a landscape that changes radically with the seasons. During the dry season, the place is exactly what anyone would expect from a desert. White sand as far as the eye can see, without a single drop of water in sight. But after a few months of rain, that same desert transforms into a mosaic of turquoise, crystal-clear pools, some so crystal clear that you can see the bottom with perfect clarity, and others so deep that they serve as a temporary home for fish that arrive here, in a way that even biologists took years to fully explain. The eggs of certain species are buried in the damp sand during the dry season and hatch as soon as the water returns, with live fish appearing in pools that, just months earlier, were completely dry sand. Every year, when the water evaporates again with the arrival of the dry season, the lagoons disappear almost completely, and the entire cycle starts over from scratch, in a pattern that is repeated exactly the same way for thousands of years. Do you know of any place in your country as strange or as beautiful as this one? Tell us about it in the comments. This desert deceives anyone who visits it at the wrong time of year. The next stop on this journey did something similar for centuries. It deceived an entire country about its own origins. Number 8. The Giant's Kale, the rock that for centuries appeared to be the work of giants. On the northern coast of Northern Ireland, the sea crashes against a rock formation so geometrically perfect that it's hard to believe it's entirely natural. Nearly 40,000 basalt columns, most of them almost exactly hexagonal in shape, fitted together as if someone had carved them on purpose, forming a sort of stepped path that leads straight out into the sea. For centuries before geology could explain what lay before them, the locals had only one way to make sense of what they saw: a legend. The story went that the Irish giant Fionn mac Cumhaill had built this stone causeway to cross the sea and face a rival Scottish giant. When Fionn saw just how enormous his opponent was upon arrival, he was so frightened that he fled, and his wife disguised him as a baby to deceive the Scottish giant. Upon seeing a baby of such immense size, the Scotsman imagined how colossal the father must be, and destroyed the causeway as he fled back to his homeland, leaving only the fragments that still stand today on either side of the Irish Sea. The real explanation, though less poetic, is no less surprising. About 60 million years ago, this region experienced intense volcanic activity. As the basaltic lava cooled slowly and evenly, it contracted, forming vertical cracks that, by the laws of physics, naturally tended toward a hexagonal geometry, the most efficient shape a rock can take when fracturing under that type of cooling. The same process occurred almost identically on the Scottish island of Staffa, more than 160 kilometers away across the sea, a fact that for generations was taken as further proof that the legend of the giant was true, before science could confirm that both formations originated from the same lava flow, which was later split apart by the region's own geological movement. Today, the Giant's Causeway is a World Heritage Site, and for many visitors, it remains hard to fully believe that nature, without anyone's help, is capable of producing something so perfectly geometric. There are legends that science eventually resolves completely, and there are others that, even today, continue to intertwine with the faith of those who live near the place that inspired them. Number 7. Pamukkale, the white terraces that the Romans believed to be sacred. In southwestern Turkey, on a completely white hill, there are terraced slopes that from a distance appear to be covered in snow or eternal ice, even though the temperature there hovers around 30 degrees for much of the year. Up close, the reason becomes clear. It is not ice, but limestone, formed drop by drop over thousands of years by calcium-rich thermal spring water. The name Pamukkale literally means cotton castle, and one need only look at the photographs to understand why. The water from the springs, which emerges hot and rich in calcium carbonate, cools upon contact with the air and deposits minerals layer upon layer as it flows downward, forming natural terraced pools of an almost blinding white under the sun. The ancient Greeks and Romans who inhabited this region had no scientific explanation for what they saw, so they built an entire city dedicated to healing right on the site, Hierapolis, convinced that these waters possessed real healing power for skin diseases, joint ailments, and even respiratory problems. Just a few meters from the terraces, you can still visit a grotto that the Romans called the Plutonium, the gateway to the underworld, from which an invisible gas emanated, capable of killing any animal that came too close in a matter of seconds. The temple priests, who knew the exact spot where the gas did not accumulate, would enter and exit the grotto without suffering any harm, fueling for centuries the belief that they possessed divine powers over death. Centuries later, science confirmed what was actually happening. The gas was volcanic carbon dioxide, heavier than air, which accumulated only in the lower areas of the grotto, leaving the exact spots that the priests had memorized with precision free from danger. Today, the pools of Pamukkale continue to receive a steady flow of thermal water, and although access is much more strictly regulated than in ancient times to protect the mineral formations, thousands of visitors each year still dip their feet in its waters, with exactly the same hope that the Romans had 2,000 years ago. Rarely does a legend about supernatural powers end up having an explanation as simple as a gas that is heavier than air. Made of white stone formed by hot water, the next destination on this journey takes us to the coldest and most isolated place on the planet, where a waterfall has seemed to be bleeding for over a century. Number 6. Mount Roraima, the mountain that time left completely alone. On the border between Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana, stands a mountain with vertical cliffs so steep that its summit, a flat plateau several kilometers wide, has remained virtually isolated from the rest of the world for hundreds of millions of years. Reaching the top is possible only via a single natural route, and for centuries it was considered, by both the indigenous peoples of the area and the first European explorers, an unreachable place. Roraima is one of the oldest geological formations on the entire planet, with an estimated age of nearly 2 billion years, long before any complex life forms existed on Earth. Its vertical rock walls, up to 400 meters high and completely vertical, turned it into a sort of island in the sky, completely separated from the surrounding ecosystem in the jungle below. This extreme isolation meant, just as had happened earlier on Socotra, that life at the summit evolved on its own, without any contact with species from the rest of the continent. Today, more than a third of the plants growing on the plateau exist nowhere else on the planet, including unique carnivorous plants adapted to soil that is extremely poor in nutrients, and tiny amphibians, such as a frog barely 2 centimeters long, that never leave the summit because their bodies are not adapted to survive the pressure and temperature of the lowlands. Fog shrouds the plateau for much of the year, and constant rainfall has carved formations into the rock that resemble sculptures, hidden valleys, and crystal-clear natural pools that only a handful of expeditions manage to document each year. Arthur Conan Doyle's classic novel, The Lost World, was directly inspired by this place to imagine a plateau inhabited by dinosaurs that time had forgotten, and anyone walking across its surface today can perfectly understand where that idea came from. Do you think there are still places on Earth completely unexplored like this one? Do you know of any? Tell us about it in the comments. If this mountain looks like something from another era, what comes next looks like something from another planet. Number 5. Blood Falls. The waterfall that has seemed to be bleeding for over a century. In one of the coldest and most isolated corners of the planet, the Taylor Glacier in Antarctica, there is a waterfall that completely shatters the pristine white image of the ice surrounding it. A deep red liquid gushes from a crevasse in the glacier, falling and freezing on the white ice as if the mountain itself were bleeding. When a geologist discovered it in 1911, the most logical explanation at the time seemed obvious. Some kind of red algae present in the water must be staining the liquid that color. That was the first theory, and for generations it was widely accepted as fact, though no one could fully confirm it. It took more than 100 years and technology that didn't even exist in 1911 for a team of scientists in 2017 to successfully drill into the glacier and analyze the liquid with precision. What they found had nothing to do with algae. Beneath the Taylor Glacier lies a lake that has been completely isolated from the rest of the world for over 1 million years, trapped beneath hundreds of meters of ice without light, without oxygen, and with such extreme salinity that its freezing point is much lower than that of normal water, allowing it to remain liquid despite the extreme cold. That lake also contains an extraordinarily high concentration of dissolved iron. When that water finally finds a crack and reaches the surface, the iron comes into contact with oxygen in the air for the first time in 1 million years, and it rusts almost instantly, just as a metal nail forgotten in the rain would rust. That rust is what produces the blood-red color. And the most astonishing discovery of all came next. Inside that lake, devoid of light and oxygen, scientists discovered an entire ecosystem of microorganisms that have been surviving in isolation, without any contact with the outside world, since before any known form of life existed on the surface. Today, NASA is studying this site as one of the best examples on Earth of how life might survive on other icy planets in the solar system, such as some of Jupiter's or Saturn's moons. Thousands of kilometers from here, on a completely different continent, people have been telling similar stories for generations about a lake capable of turning any animal that touches it into stone. That lake, which mummifies any animal that touches it, still awaits us, very soon, near the end of this journey. But first, on a completely different end of the planet, there is a cave where simply entering without the proper equipment can kill you in a matter of minutes. Number 4. The Naica Crystal Cave. The cave that can kill anyone who enters without protection in minutes. Beneath a lead and silver mine in the Chihuahua Desert in Mexico, 300 meters underground, lies a natural chamber that looks like something out of a dream. Selenite crystals up to 12 meters long and weighing several metric tons, growing side by side, as if they were the columns of a temple carved by giants. They are, without a doubt, the largest natural crystals ever documented on Earth. Miners drilling through the rock in the year 2000 discovered this chamber by accident while clearing a path to a new vein. What they found on the other side was unlike anything ever seen before in any other mine in the world. But the beauty of the place hides a danger that almost no one can withstand without help. Inside the cave, the temperature hovers constantly around 45 degrees Celsius, with humidity as high as 100%. That combination makes the human body completely unable to cool itself through sweating, and without a special suit with internal cooling, anyone can suffer fatal heat stroke in as little as 10 or 15 minutes of direct exposure. The reason for these giant crystals is directly linked to that same extreme heat. For hundreds of thousands of years, this chamber remained completely submerged in water at a very stable temperature of around 58 degrees, saturated with calcium sulfate. At such a constant temperature and over such a long period, the crystals were able to grow extremely slowly and in an orderly fashion, without the disruptions that normally halt crystal growth anywhere else on the planet. When mining operations pumped the water out of the cave to allow for work, they uncovered a chamber that had been growing in secret for centuries, completely in the dark, beneath the Mexican desert. Today, only a handful of scientists have been able to enter fully equipped, wearing ice-cooled suits and special respirators. And even they cannot stay inside for more than 30 or 40 minutes at a time. Since pumping at the mine ceased in 2015, water has begun to slowly return to the cave, and scientists estimate that, at some point in the coming years, the crystals will once again be completely submerged, resuming a growth process that had already been underway for hundreds of thousands of years before a human being interrupted it. That cave of giant crystals won't be the only surprise involving water and heat on this trip. The place we've been promising for a while, that lake capable of turning any animal that touches it into stone, has finally arrived. Number 3. Lake Natron, the lake that turns animals into stone. In northern Tanzania, near the border with Kenya, there is a reddish-colored lake where animals that die near its shore do not decompose as they do anywhere else on the planet. Instead, they become mummified, their bodies hardened and calcified, preserving an almost perfect posture for months and even years, as if time had stopped at the very moment of their death. For years, photographs of birds, bats, and other small animals, completely petrified along the shore of Lake Natron, circulated around the world, sparking all sorts of theories. Some spoke of curses, others of some kind of unknown poison in the water. The reality, while not supernatural, is just as unsettling. Lake Natron has such an extreme level of alkalinity that its pH can reach as high as 11.5, a value close to that of pure ammonia. Its waters are laden with sodium carbonate and other salts that, upon contact with the skin or eyes of most animals, cause severe chemical burns. For a bird that mistakenly lands on the wrong shore, or for an animal that tries to drink without realizing the danger, the result can be fatal within minutes. And once dead, the sodium carbonate in the water itself acts as an extremely powerful natural preservative. The same type of compound the ancient Egyptians used to mummify their pharaohs. The body calcifies before it can decompose normally. For a long time, it was thought that no living creature could survive near these waters. But what scientists later discovered completely changed that notion. Lake Natron is, every year, the breeding ground for more than 2 million greater flamingos, the largest concentration of this species on the entire planet. The flamingos have developed skin on their legs capable of withstanding the water's corrosive effects, and they feed on a cyanobacterium that thrives only in this extreme environment. The same organism that gives the lake its characteristic blood-red color. That cyanobacteria is also responsible for the intense pink hue of the flamingo's feathers. They literally turn pink from feeding in the only place in the world where other predators cannot follow them. With everything you've just heard, do you know of any lake or river in your country that's as dangerous as this one? Tell us about it in the comments. Not all the dangers of this journey are visible at first glance. The next place came into being by accident and became something that seems impossible. Number 2. Fly Geyser. The geyser that was created by mistake and which nature turned into something impossible. In the middle of the Nevada desert in the United States, there's a geyser that shouldn't exist according to any known natural process, because in fact, it wasn't created by nature at all. In 1964, a company drilled a well in this area in search of geothermal water for an energy project that was never completed. The well was abandoned without being properly sealed, and for decades the hot, mineral-rich groundwater began to seep to the surface steadily, without anyone intervening. What happened next is what turned this mistake into one of the strangest formations on the planet. As the water continuously rose to the surface for more than 50 years, it deposited layer upon layer of dissolved minerals, primarily calcium carbonate, forming a mound that continues to grow and now stands several meters tall. This mound is completely covered with thermophilic algae, microorganisms capable of living in very hot water, which give the geyser its characteristic color, a mixture of intense greens and bright reds that changes depending on the temperature and humidity at any given moment. The result is a geyser in constant activity, continuously spewing water 24 hours a day, something no other natural geyser in the world does, because natural geysers, such as those in Yellowstone, operate on pressure cycles that require time to recharge between eruptions. Fly Geyser, not relying on these natural cycles, simply never stops. Today, the formation continues to grow. Minerals continue to accumulate year after year, and scientists studying the site say that, in a few more decades, its current form will be unrecognizable compared to how it looks now, all because of a well that should never have been left open. Hit like if you're surprised that something so spectacular came about completely by accident. That human error turned natural wonder will not, however, be the strangest phenomenon of this entire trip. That place, which has been burning non-stop longer than any other fire on Earth, awaits us right now. Number 1. The Gateway to Hell, the fire that no one has been able to put out in over 50 years. In the heart of the Karakum Desert, in Turkmenistan, the Earth opens up into a 70-meter wide hole from which fire has been spewing ceaselessly, day and night, for more than 5 decades. At night, the orange glow can be seen from kilometers away, illuminating the entire desert, as if a piece of hell had decided to take up residence on the surface. The locals gave it a blunt name, the Gate to Hell. The story behind this fire is as strange as the crater itself. In 1971, a team of Soviet geologists was drilling in the area in search of natural gas deposits when, without any warning, the ground beneath their rig collapsed completely, opening a gigantic crater and releasing a massive cloud of methane gas into the atmosphere. Fearing that this toxic gas would poison nearby towns, the engineers made a decision that, at the time, seemed perfectly logical: to set it on fire, calculating that it would burn for only a few weeks, until the accumulated gas was consumed. That was the first major assumption in this story, and it was completely wrong. More than 50 years have passed, and the fire continues to burn exactly as it did on the first day. Beneath the crater lies a gas pocket so vast that none of the original calculations could have anticipated its true size, and today, no one in the world can say with certainty when it will go out. It could burn for decades more. It might never go out as long as anyone is alive to tell the tale. In 2010, the Turkmenistan government itself even considered sealing the crater, concerned about the constant loss of such a valuable resource. The attempt was never carried out, and the fire continues to burn today, having become, without anyone planning it, one of the strangest places in all of Central Asia. And this was, precisely, the place that owed us an answer. The Siberian herders we saw a little while ago standing beside their craters that explode from within the earth without warning use that same name to describe what they see in their own region. One has been burning non-stop for 50 years. The other continues to blast through the frozen ground, with science still lacking a definitive answer as to when it will happen again. Two gates to hell, at two opposite ends of the planet and neither with a closing date. If you want to keep discovering places like these, now is the time to subscribe to Uncensored World. As you've seen on our channel, you'll discover the world like nowhere else. That brings us to the end of this tour. Of the 20 places we've seen today, which one left you most speechless? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to hit like before you go. Because if any of this has surprised you, what's coming in our next video will take things even further. We're going to meet the most amazing tribes on the planet, people whose very bodies defy the laws of science. Humans capable of living underwater as if they were fish, and peoples whose entire bodies have been shrunk by nature so they can survive where no one else can.